Do you remember the name of the last mission in DMC5? Here's another question. Do you remember how the protagonist became stronger in the previous games? If you say by defeating bosses and obtaining devil arms or by collecting blue orbs through secret missions, you'd be right. But if you say through the divine statues, you'd be very right. However, DMC5 changed the role of the divine statues a little. Even though they still appear throughout the game quite frequently, they were joined by a new addition, telephone booth. First, it's worth mentioning that these phone booths are inspired by London's iconic red telephone boxes, just as some of the game's locations are inspired by London itself. The red double-decker buses are probably the most obvious example. That's only the cosmetic side of it. When using a divine statue, the player is left alone with a strangely shaped monument while a soothing ambient track plays in the background. The phone booth, on the other hand, triggers an entire cutscene and is used to call Nico. In other words, the player reaches out to a real person for help rather than relying on some kind of divine force. And that's exactly what Nero does in the final mission, True Power. Right before the final battle against his own father, the protagonist calls Kyrie simply to open up and tell her everything that's happened. Kyrie tells him that he already knows what he has to do, and that's enough for Nero to literally grow wings and put an end to the bloodshed between two brothers that had lasted for decades. Of course, that might sound like an oversimplification, but in the end, all it took was one phone call. By the way, this scene reminds me a lot of Luke's conversation with Leia in Return of the Jedi. Right before facing his own father, the main character also speaks with the closest woman in his life and in doing so reveals, just like Nero, that he has a family. He doesn't become physically stronger because of it, but he becomes emotionally grounded, allowing him to face the final confrontation ready for whatever comes next. So what were the developers trying to say? Anything. And that's exactly the beauty of art. A single idea can give rise to countless different interpretations. Personally, I think Capcom wanted to show that true strength lies in the connections between people, in compassion and in love. And that's why the man who literally split himself in two in pursuit of greater power ultimately lost. He simply never stood a chance.
Interesting.
If you like this breakdown, consider subscribing, because there will be more breakdowns like this. See ya!